All right, so let's talk about NFL playoff best ball. So if you're like me, you probably played a lot of fantasy football throughout the regular season, probably trying to compete in your leagues and that sort of thing. I think the majority of leagues ended in week 17. I know mine did, but a few of you guys probably played in week 18. But I would say the majority of us ended in week 17. I had a few good seasons, or excuse me, I had a few good leagues, and I had a couple of leagues where I was just a complete train wreck. Just drafted wrong, picked the wrong players, that sort of thing. So I was trying to find different and creative ways to kind of compete and stay competitive throughout the regular season, trying to stay engaged with the games. So I did a lot of best ball and I did a lot of battle royale this year, in addition to the leagues I was doing. So let's jump into this. I want to talk to you guys about the strategy of playoff best ball and how to win. I've been so addicted to like just drafting. Maybe I shouldn't say that. I've just been having so much fun drafting teams and trying to couple that winning combination of playoff players. And so I just want to kind of talk to you guys about the strategy that I've been using and the idea and the concepts behind the playoff strategy versus just regular season strategy. So let me walk you guys through it. So I'll go through the overview, the format and scoring, the brackets, team breakdown, my strategy, and then we're going to draft a couple teams together. So the overview here, playoff best ball isn't really drafting about the best players. It's about drafting the teams to stay alive. I mean, of course, you want the good players, but you really want the teams to stay alive. So it's about stacking players from the certain teams that you feel confident will make it to the Super Bowl. So once a team is eliminated, those players stop scoring entirely. So think about that. So you need to have that structure. You need to have that correlation and team equity matter more so than the individual talent. So let's take somebody like the Panthers or the Steelers. So let's say last weekend during the wild card round, you were convinced that that was a really good team. Like maybe you're thinking about DK Metcalf or Kenneth Gainwell or whoever, and you thought they would put up some good points, throughout the entire season, but or playoffs, I should say. I mean, you have to think about it. Like they were going to be lucky to play 2 games, so you probably weren't drafting them as much. That's probably an extreme example that everyone kind of saw coming, but I think another one was the Eagles and 49ers, and then the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. I think those were 2 critical games that wiped out a lot of teams during playoff best ball. But that's the risk that you take. You pick teams that you think have a shot, and you kind of get creative with your lineups. So the goal is simple. You want to build a roster that survives every round and peaks in the Super Bowl. So the format and scoring. So for the weeks that I've been doing on Underdog Fantasy, you have 5 starters, you get 5 scores, and then you have 5 bench pieces. So real quick, you have one quarterback, of course, you have one running back, 2 wide receivers, and then one flex that can be the running back, wide receiver, or tight end. And then you have a 5-man bench. So pretty straightforward stuff. On the right side, you have the scoring. You can get pretty self-explanatory for the most part. So you can kind of look at that real quick. So the underdog tournament example that I've been doing, you can find all kinds of tournaments, but I'll kind of just walk you through real quick what I've been doing this past week. So the wild card games have already been played, so you kind of missed out. If you haven't already drafted, you missed out on the wild card round, and I think the payouts were a good bit heavier if you had played all 4 rounds, and that was actually more interesting to me because you had a lot more teams and you had a lot more variety. So anyway, let's just talk about what's going on right now. So you have the divisional round drafts going on right now. So you need to get the drafts in before the games start this weekend. So if you want to play, you got to get it in before Saturday. So what's going on here? So the underdog tournament. So you'll draft a team in a pot of 4 guys or girls. You'll pick players, and so you need to come in first place this weekend out of your pod. And then if you survive that round, you will go into the conference championships and you'll end up in a 10-man pod. You will need to become the best team out of that 10-team pod. You will need to be in first place. And then if you survive that second round, the conference championship round, you will go into the Super Bowl round where you will be competing with 560 other people for the first overall spot. And so you'll see the prize breakdown on the right side. And there's plenty of other prizes as well. I just wanted to highlight the top 10. Of course, first place is $50,000. But I think if you make it out of first round, I think if you survive your pod, I think you make money as well. I think it's just a few bucks or whatever, based on what I saw. But still, you can make money. I'm lose. Okay, good. Some of these pictures are a little shoddy, so I'm gonna have to like kind of work on this for you guys. But real quick, breakdown of the entire bracket. So you guys miss out on the wild card round, so we're gonna kind of ignore that for right now. But so for the divisional round, you have the Broncos and the Bills, you have the Patriots and the Texans, You have the Seahawks and the 49ers. Then you also have the Bears and Rams. So I think we have a lot of interesting games this weekend. It can honestly go either way. As you saw in the wild card round, we had a lot of exciting stuff that came down to that last drive, so it could have really have gone either way. I mean, the Panthers, they had a chance to pull that game out. They really had no business doing that, but they did have a chance. So real quick, you can see who's favorited and who has the projections and that sort of thing. So I think this does a great job of showing you, hey, you need to pick players. You need to think about first off, you want to pick a team from the AFC side, and you want to think about the teams on the NFC side, and think about logically who's going to play who, and who do you not want to draft. So, for example, I'll jump into this real quick. I mean, if the Bears and Rams are playing each other, you probably don't want to pick five Bears players and then five Rams players because then you're immediately losing five players out of that first round. So you want to think about who's going to survive in advance and hopefully face each other in the Super Bowl so that you have a starting lineup in the Super Bowl. That's what you want. So I kind of spoke a little too soon, but I'm just going to break down the team breakdowns. So, kind of touch on this, higher scores automatically count each week. The trade-off is brutal because once a team is eliminated, those players are done. So you have to continuously think about how you want that to go. So you want players who stick around a long time. So I've already kind of touched on all that. So you don't want your good draft to die. So of course, is the NFC teams. So a couple of ideas as far as the NFC team builds you want to try to work your way through. So the key players to me on the Seahawks are JSN. Now, I think that goes without saying. He's usually a first round pick. If he's not, and if he's still available at the first round, pick him up. I've never seen that happen, but if he's available, you got to have him if you want to have a Seahawks build. KW9 or Sharps, I usually pick one if I want a Seahawks build. Sometimes you can go both. It just depends. And then I think you want a quarterback from the Super Bowl team that you think will go to the Super Bowl. So you got to go Sam Darnold. You can also go Shaheed. You can also go AJ Barner. You can also pick up some other players as well. Cooper Cup. I mean, you got to have some unique combination as well. But I just want to touch on the key players to me that these are critical pieces if you want that build. So Rams, you're going to be lucky to get all four players. Puka, Devonta, Kyron, and then Stafford. You're going to be lucky to get all four players. Usually I've seen users get two, usually maybe three. But in that case, it's usually I usually try to go Puka, Devonta, Stafford if I had a preference, and then later on I'll go get Corum, who's usually available in that third, fourth, fifth round. Um, to me, the tight ends are a bonus. Like if you miss out on a couple of those, you're probably not going to get Puka and Devontae. You know, the tight ends kind of help you out. I love going after Parkinson and Higby. As well. I think those are accessory pieces that will also catch touchdowns and will also get some yards. They'll have their moments as well. So jumping into the Bears, to me, I think this is a team that you can go a wide variety of ways. So the Bears, DeAndre Swift, Mononga is also another piece you could potentially go for. I have never really gone for him, but I mean, it's something to consider. Loveland, Burden, Odunze, and then DJ Moore. And then there's probably a couple other pieces as well that you could consider as well. But Caleb Williams, of course, is your quarterback. 49ers, to me, if you don't have CMC, you don't have a 49ers build at this point. With George Kittle done for the postseason, you really have to have CMC at this point. And then Jennings, of course, and then Purdy to me are like the three pieces that, if you want to go 49ers hard, you got to have those three guys. You could probably pick up a couple other players on their team as well as accessory pieces to me. So let's see here. Yeah, jumping into the AFC teams, there's your four teams: Broncos, Patriots, Texans, and Bills. So team build ideas for this one. So Broncos, I've been going after RJ Harvey. I know that they say that Dobbins might come back in the Super Bowl. I personally am not taking that chance, but if he plays and somebody is going to have him and he's probably going to score some points, it's just how it is, man. But anyway, so RJ Harvey, Cortland Sutton, or Franklin. I usually try to grab both. If I grab Bo Nix, usually if I grab a quarterback, I want the receivers. I try to have them stacked together is my goal. So you can also go Evan Ingram or Marvin Mims as well. You can go a couple other players. So Patriots, Drake May, got to have him. Ramadre, I hope I spelled that correctly, or Trevion Henderson. Of course, Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs, and then I put wild card. They have so many receivers. You can just take your pick, honestly, in my opinion. One of them's going to pop off. Some of them are going to have quiet games. So you just take your pick unless you just feel strongly convicted by one or two players. So Texans is an interesting one, man. I mean, you can't pick the defense, unfortunately. I know they outscored the Steelers. I know they outscored the Chargers. Obviously, you can't pick the defense. But anyway, I know Nico's banged up right now. I know he has a concussion, but if he's healthy, you gotta go Nico. In fact, I've been picking up Nico. Just hey, if I think the Texans are going to make the Super Bowl in some of these drafts, again, I've been drafting so much, so I've been trying different combinations. But for the Texans' bill, I'll pick up Nico and I'll go get like, I didn't put him on here. I'll get like Dalton Schultz like that, Higgins or Christian Kirk or somebody like that, just to compliment him. And if the Texans make it to the Super Bowl and Nico's back, then it's like, hey, I got Nico. So I like going Nico, like going Woody Marks, and then Stroud. And then you can take your pick as far as their receivers go. They all seem to have their moments. So I don't think there's a wrong answer there. Bills. If you don't have Josh Allen, forget it. Um, Usually this time now, I've been seeing more Josh Allen and Cook builds, which is great. You want to have both, obviously, and then Shakir Kincaid, and then take your pick after that, Brandon Cooks or Keon Coleman or whoever. But back in the wild card drafts, I some teams were lucky to get both Josh Allen and James Cook, and I thought that was incredibly annoying. People were just getting sniped left and right, so that was incredibly annoying. But I'm not really seeing that so much now in this divisional round as much. So anyway, those are the breakdowns. So common mistakes that I commonly see. People spraying the draft. And what I mean by that is like during the regular season, like people obviously just pick the best player that they feel like, you don't really see stacking as much. You just see players picking players, or you see users picking players from a wide variety of teams, obviously. But playoffs is a completely different game. You want to pick players who can complement each other and stack teams. So I'll get into that in the next slide as well. So that's the biggest difference to me. The second thing to me is not having a Super Bowl plan. I think it's kind of hard now to not have a Super Bowl plan because you're so deep, you're halfway through the playoffs at this point. So, but you want to have a Super Bowl plan. You want to pick players who have a shot of actually facing each other in the Super Bowl. You know, I've seen some teams do like the Rams and then the Seahawks, and they'll just go hard on it NFC, which is an interesting strategy. But you're going to lose some bodies unless you pick up some players from the AFC side. So I mean, I've seen it done that way, but I personally don't love doing that. I mean, if that's the winning lineup, then I'd love to see it, but I personally just have not seen too much success with that. But so just think about your Super Bowl plan. Who do you want in the Super Bowl, and think about how that matchup is going to go. So an example would be like, hey, you think the Rams and Broncos will be in the Super Bowl, but you picked up CJ Stroud. Like, it doesn't really make sense, because if CJ Stroud gets eliminated by, let's say, the Broncos next week, you got a zero in this Super Bowl from your quarterback spot. You're not going to win. So think about that. The other thing too is drafting too many dead spots or chasing ADP. Examples would be like drafting three quarterbacks. You don't need three quarterbacks unless you messed up, because you have two players who are just going to be dead roster spots. So it doesn't help you. Um, I've done that. I accidentally made that mistake a couple weeks ago. Like I just was not paying attention. So you kind of, just be aware of that. Um, Drafting 80 players. Really, every once in a while, you probably want to pick up an advanced piece from a team, that you may not think like has that real shot, deep shot at this. But I mean, sometimes you need those advanced piece players to help bring up your scores. So you kind of just need to think about that as well. And then another example is drafting players who play each other in this divisional round. So like the Rams and Bears. Like if you draft full Rams and Bears, you're losing you're losing half your team right out of the gate. So, you know, probably not a great strategy there. So, kind of going through the strategy here, you probably want to pick a primary Super Bowl team and then a secondary complementary Super Bowl team. So think about it: one team from the NFC, one team from the one team from the NFC, one team from the AFC. Pick one. And then you probably want 3 6 players. 6 is a lot. I would say 3 to 5 in general, but you can go up to 6. I've done that from that Super Bowl team, and then you want 3 to 5 on the other side. And then sometimes, if you have room, I will go and pick up that third mini stack of players that can complement those two teams. And then occasionally, if you have Well, I've talked long enough as far as this goes. I think we get the idea. It should be pretty straightforward, but it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to take us through some drafts together on Underdog Fantasy. So I'm going to take us over there, and then we're going to draft together, and I'll kind of provide my commentary. And I promise I'll make this quick. So we'll have some fun. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so we're in the draft here. It looks like I have the first overall spot. I've recorded quite a few of these, so I don't recall exactly how this draft played out. But of course, in the first spot, I'm always going to take just because he's so hard to get. So you'll kind of see everybody else making their selections. I think JSN was the second guy. Yeah. And then third guy goes to Josh Allen. And then the fourth guy gets the fourth and fifth pick. Let's see which direction he goes in. But see, since I went Puka, I'm going to be lucky to go and get Devontae Adams, Tyron Williams, and then Matthew Stafford. So he took both those guys. So, I mean, that's just a common thing that happens. Usually gets sniped. So this is kind of not an ideal setup for me at this point. So I'll take Tyron here, and then the next pick will be an interesting one. I actually went Bo Nix. So pretty much what I'm trying to do here is set up for a Rams Broncos Super Bowl. So I had figured I have to at least get Bo Nix since I missed out on Matthew Stafford. So I'm already not off to a great start. So this isn't ideal, but I think it's just a graphic example of how users in the same pod are competing for the same teams. And so it's like you have teams that are getting snagged and sniped by multiple users. So you kind of see like a little tug of war, in my opinion, of how multiple users are fighting for the same team. So, I mean, the Rams are very desirable just because they were, one of the favorites to win the whole thing. So I can understand his point of view, but it stinks for me. So here, I'm trying to pivot and trying to figure out which direction to go in. So I went Blake Corum as a backup running back, and then it looks like I would go Cortland Sutton to basically help out with Bo Nix. So I'm just going to continue to work through these Rams and the Broncos build here. So this guy in the fourth and fifth spot, I'm not sure who he's been picking up. So that was a different team. He picked Zach Charbonnet, which is usually a good pick just because he and Kenneth Walker always compete each other, are always competing for touchdowns and things like that. So he would go Loveland. I can't remember who that first guy was. I wondered if it was DeAndre Swift. I had a hard time seeing that one. It scrolled too quickly. So I have a star next to Troy Franklin's name. I usually click and star players that I have an eye on just because it's hard to you have 30 seconds to make a decision. So I usually try to think ahead and try to figure out a game plan going forward. So he picked Cooper Kupp. I picked Troy Franklin. Then I am looking at the tight ends, it looks like. And then I see Nico and I see CJ Stroud. So the thought process here is Nico is such a player that has been falling in ADP, but he's such a good player that, he's been drafted highly and he's such a good player, but he's been falling in ADP just because of his concussion injury. But the thought process on that pick is that I will pick Broncos players and I'll pick Texans players, hoping that the Texans will win this weekend and that Nico will come back next weekend or even for the Super Bowl. So at least I'll have somebody competing. So if I get Nico, chances are I'm going to go CJ Stroud or pick up a couple other receivers. So that's kind of the idea there. I can't recall exactly how this draft shaked out. So I get Higbee there to tight end. And then on this pick, I go CJ Stroud. I have Bo Nix, so that's the risk that I'm almost willing to take. I pick Woody instead because I want to have two quarterbacks on the AFC side. I wonder if I wait on C.J. Stroud. I mean, C.J. Stroud had such a terrible game last weekend that I wonder if so many people are scared off from him. So I'm almost like, okay, I'll get Woody, and then we'll see if C.J. Stroud falls to me. If he does, great. If somebody else falls to me, I can always grab another player as well. So that's kind of the thought process on that one. I think this is my final pick. Yeah, that's no, I'm sorry, I got time. Actually, I can't read the numbers. I think that is my last pick. So this is my final pick. So I need to make a good selection here, somebody who can actually help my team out. So I have Bo Nix, Kyron, Corum, Marks, Puka, Sutton, Franklin, Collins, Higbee. So I could go pretty much anybody at this point. I went Pearsall. The thought process on that one was probably just have an advance rate piece there.
정신 걸렸네.
I mean, that's how that last draft felt. I mean, that's just playoff basketball in a nutshell. So anyway, here's another draft where I'm coming up here. I think I was in the third spot, so let's see which direction I go in. I see Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, James Cook, some other players. Okay, so I went Josh Allen. So the hope here is probably to complete the Bills for the AFC side of the draft, and then hopefully find a NFC team that's still available to have a Super Bowl matchup here. So we'll see what this guy ends up doing here. He has the fourth and fifth pick. So hopefully he does not take James Cook, who would be an essential piece for me to complete the Bills stack. So you went Christian McCaffrey and Drake May. So here I'm going to go James Cook, I hope. That would be the most logical sense here. I guess I'm taking my time with it, making a decision here. Yeah, I end up going James Cook. So we'll see what the other guys ends up doing, but I think what I'm going to try to do here on this next pick is either go with Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid, or try to work on my NFC side stack, and then that way I have my Super Bowl matchup, and then hopefully get some advance rate pieces to help me get that number one score for this pod, and then advance into the next week's pod, and then hopefully get myself into that Super Bowl matchup here. So you went Bo Nix, so I went Sam Darnold. It looks like I'm going Sam Darnold here. I'm probably just thinking through my decisions here. So I go Sam Darnold. I missed out on JSN because he was one of the first picks before me that I even had a chance to get. So the idea here was that even though I missed out on JSN, I can still go for that Seahawks stack, and I go Shakir here to help out with my Bills here, and hopefully Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet is still on the board, or I can just go and get Dalton Kincaid and then a few other wide receivers for the Seahawks. So here I'm up. It looks like I missed out on both those two running backs, so I went with Kincaid to secure my Bill stack here. So I already have James Cook, Josh Allen, Shakir, and then Dalton Kincaid. So I feel pretty confident I have a good piece. I have the good pieces for the Bills. So here it's going to be interesting to see which decision I go here. Do I do Cooper Kupp, Blake Corum? Okay, so I went Blake Corum. Interesting. Okay, so I must have been thinking to go with like the Rams or the Seahawks at this point. If I went Rams down that path, I could go Corum. I'm probably thinking, okay, maybe I can get one of their tight ends and kind of just have a small mini stack there where I can continue working down these Seahawks players because I see Shaheed still on there. I see Kupp on there. So I end up going Cooper Kupp there. Usually Shaheed had been going before Kupp, but I had seen a couple other drafts where I had picked a lot of Shaheed, so I wanted to mix it up a little bit, and so I went Kupp on that one. So you'll see a lot of stars by the names of players I like to grab. I just like to have that. So I ended up getting Shaheed there as well. So I feel pretty good about this stack. Although getting JSN, Josh Allen, and James Cook would be an exceptional draft. It's just not realistic. You're not going to get all three guys. It's just not possible from what I've seen. Unless you had a crazy draft room that just went off the rails. I just don't see that happening. So I have two quarterbacks, I have two running backs, and then I have four wide receivers and tight ends. So here I'll probably either go running back or wide receiver. I make the pick with Brandon Cooks. So let's talk about this real quick. So for quarterbacks, I like to have 1 to 2 quarterbacks. Ideally, I like to have the Super Bowl quarterbacks. For running backs, ideally, I like to have 2. No more than 3. If I go more than 3, I just think it creates some dead spots in your roster. So I end up going Higbee there. I just think it creates some dead spots in your roster, and it's just not ideal because you can only have 1 running back and 1 flex. So I like to have the flex be a running back or wide receiver. So here's just a breakdown of what I did. I went Bills, Seahawks, and then Rams, and then you can see their team scores. So anyway, this is a great rundown of the draft. This is all I got for you guys, but I appreciate you all watching. Please let me know if you have any comments, suggestions, or anything like that. Thank you, guys.